Welcome to the Armchair Constituents, the weekly podcast about news topics. While we're not experts or academics, we do like to speak our voice freely. And keep in mind that as the facts change, so can our opinions.
We are now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
All right, we're live. Welcome to the Armchair Constituents, episode number 7. I'm here with Kramer, as always. Got a long show to get through today, so we're going to try to do it fast so we don't break that 2-hour mark that we've been avoiding since the beginning.
Very close. Was it episode before last? We got pretty close to it?
Yeah, we've gotten like 6 or 7 minutes. Like that's how close we've gotten. They're also our least listened to episodes, so that's why I want to avoid them. So we have let's just go through the updates. We have quick updates. Hopefully they're quick. We argued on a lot of them already. Net neutrality vote. FCC votes 2-1 to end the 2015 net neutrality order. Chairman of the FCC says this will foster growth and investment and help consumers. Bullshit. But, you got anything to add to that, or I can go to the next one?
No, nothing to jump in with.
So we have an update on the hacking, not the hacking, the ransomware.
Wannacry.
I hate Wannacry. It sounds so stupid. Basically this week, another security researcher released a tool on GitHub called Wannacry. It's supposed to help. It'll help any system like Windows. I think it said Windows XP and up. Decrypt your files without paying if your system becomes exposed to this. Which we spoke about the researcher last week that said like this will happen again. They'll find another way and yada yada yada. There's stuff floating around about similar code being used, the same code that the North Korean hacking group, the Lazarus group, used. I don't know. It's kind of a weak argument. I just mentioned it because North Korea. But
North Korea.
The biggest update with this is the Metro, which is a British tabloid that most of us probably don't know about, wrote an article last week about the security researcher. What was his Twitter handle he went by?
Malware something tech, like a malware tech guy or something.
Malware tech, yeah. So they ran an article with his picture as the top of the published article, ran his full name in the first paragraph, and then ended the article saying he wants to remain anonymous. He's come out and said he has to move now because he is essentially being harassed by these tabloids, which apparently is not uncommon with British tabloids. They just exploit the situation and get as much out of it as possible. And I'm kind of bashing British tabloids. U.S. tabloids do it too. They usually do it to celebrities.
Hey, dead celebrities. They've been milking Tupac for a while now.
So we've been touching on like libel law and free speech cases for the past 2 or 3 weeks. So we have 2 more. San Francisco man named Robert Peralta turned himself in this week after making a comment on Facebook. I don't have the direct comment. He essentially...
I've actually got it right here. He says, wow, brother, they want to hit our general. It's time to strike back. Let's burn this motherfucker's house down. And that was directed to an officer. Apparently, according to The Guardian, Peralta's charges have come at a time of heightened concerns about threats against law enforcement following a number of police killings. Let me see here. I can't remember who it was in reference to. I think someone got arrested. And he said something along those lines.
The man he refers to, or the person he refers to as their general, made a post alleging that he was manhandled and choked by this officer. Yeah, so that's what it was. You and I disagree on this. I think he was irresponsible. I don't think that free speech covers your ability to threaten someone online. But
yeah, I mean, we with our pre-conversation debate that we had about it. I've been thinking about it in the 3 minutes that has passed since we've had it. And, again, I think what the guy did was blatantly irresponsible and incredibly dumb to say something like that. I don't think it should be a criminal offense, in my view. I think it is very difficult to communicate things online that have context for what they are. And I know the context for this is a guy's like, hey, we should go burn this cat's house down. My problem with this is the implication that it sets, or the precedent that it begins to establish. According to some studies that were released, there's already a lot of police surveillance that is plagued by racial bias that focuses a lot on Black and minority communities. But for me, I view the internet very much as a bastion of free speech. And if we said if kind of you and I were chit-chatting and this wasn't something we published, and I was like, oh God, I wish that guy's house would get burned down. Or I say, we should go burn his house down. That wouldn't be a violation of free speech. But, if we go out there and we, shout it, or we post something like that, there's a circumstance like this. But my problem with the gray area of social media is, at what point does it move from a private direct message conversation between you and I that the police have the ability to see versus, you're in a particular group or you say it in that way. I think my bigger concern is the precedent that it sets for surveillance and the restriction of speech in general. Was
this a direct message?
No. It was just a comment that was put up.
Right. So this is public. To me, this is a threat. Now, there's context. If you and I were joking around like, oh man, it'd be tactless if we were just like, oh, I should just burn that guy's house down. There's context to that. You're saying in a sarcastic tone. It's stupid, but regardless. But to me, the way I read his comment, it didn't come off as sarcastic or joking. He didn't do it. That's a whole different thing. He's not getting a felony offense for this, but there should be consequences for threatening someone online. There's a big difference between saying something offensive to somebody and threatening bodily harm. That's the difference. The internet shouldn't be a lawless paradise where you can just threaten and bully and just do whatever you want. There should be consequences to this. It's a touchy subject. And it's hard to judge, but we talk about this all the time. There's context. Somebody makes a joking video, which we're going to talk about next. You can't then take that and try to prosecute them. But if somebody makes a video talking about starting a riot and killing police, burning people's houses down, that's you're moving into a different territory that I don't think is covered. And I made the argument of yelling fire in a crowded theater. Like, there is consequences to this because it can lead to bodily harm. And he didn't do it, but what if somebody read that like, yeah, that's a good idea, and then they go burn his house down? He's suspect number one. All this does is this leads to people thinking twice before they shout off their frustrations online. I get what you're going for, but I don't agree that it should just be free speech, brush it off.
Yeah, I think my problem with the fire in the crowded theater argument is that even Oliver Wendell Holmes, who made that argument, came to doubt it. And Christopher Hitchens gave some really good context about what the fire in a crowded theater ruling is. The fire in a crowded theater ruling was the case that was used in by Holmes was a ruling that was designed to suppress the free speech of socialists who were opposed to World War I. And Oliver Wendell Holmes said that being allowed to protest World War I was an act that was of severe national security risk to the United States, akin to shouting fire in a crowded theater, if I'm not mistaken, and because of the damage that it could cause. And that is my problem with, and I'm not idealistic. I'm not an ideologue on too many things. And I have a lot of folks that like the Second Amendment is like their thing, and like if it gets touched, they freak out. I generally don't have beliefs like that, with the exception of the First Amendment for free speech, freedom of the press, freedom of expression of religion, and things like that. My concern, and again, it may be an overreaction to it because of how protective I view free speech, is that policing speech is easily politicized. And it's easy to look back at the history and go, oh, okay, well, fire in a crowded theater. Well, fire in a crowded theater was designed to stop socialists from from protesting a war. And it's very easy to look at speech and go, okay, well, that's blatant. We think that, that should be restricted. Oh, but this thing should also be restricted, and this thing should also be restricted. It's a slippery slope argument. That's all it is. And, and again, with the critics that have gone after police departments for having a large racial bias in who they are surveilling, but also the police themselves through social media, limiting the free speech of people, not allowing them to comment on things, deleting comments, blocking people that are getting in trouble and getting sued for these things. I'm very iffy about it. And I understand it's controversial.
Right. I mean, I don't listen. You can go into the history of the argument, but I'm still going at its basis, his most basic form. I'm not going into silencing socialists. So that doesn't really fit with what I'm saying here at all. But the man made a threat online, whether he went through with it or not. They put a warrant out for his arrest, and he turned himself in. He was released. I don't know what charges he has, if any. But like I said, all this leads to is you need to consider what you're saying online, and it's not this Wild West that it once was. I have no problem with that. As for who they're surveilling online, I don't know about that either. It could something be as simple as this guy was this general was making comments after he was obviously just in an altercation with a police officer, and that's why it caught up on their radar, or somebody just reported it to the police. There's no way for us to know that, but I will stand by my argument that you should be held accountable for threats you make online, given the context. I don't see that it's that slippery of a slope where it turns into they can just arrest you for anything, because it's everything has context.
I mean, I think that's the point though, is that everything does have context. If I don't have
right,
Facebook.
But what was his context? Was his context a joke?
I want to present a hypothetical. I want to present a hypothetical to you. So, yeah, the only social media I have is the stuff that we have for the podcast. I don't have any of my personal stuff, but once upon a time I did. Let's say hypothetically, you and I are having that mock conversation that we had talked about earlier, where we're sarcastic, like, "Oh, we should go burn that cat's house down." But we have that conversation in comment form. It's just a couple of comments like, "Oh, I can't stand that guy," and I comment, yeah, we should burn his house down." Now, you and I know that we're joking, but if that's all the context is to it, is that, "Oh yeah, I don't like that guy." Me, "Yeah, we should burn his house down." But you and I know that we're joking because of the context, but to an outside observer who doesn't understand the context of it, that would be me committing a crime, or that it's me making a threat, when it's not actually the case. You and I both know it because we know the context, but to an external observer, they don't know the context of it. All you're seeing is the literal text.
Okay. But that doesn't change my point of view at all. By making it me, and me knowing it was a joke, it's still incredibly irresponsible, and I have to face the consequences for it. I don't agree with it at all. Police officer, person, if you're going online and threatening harm to somebody, if you think it's funny, that's fine, but you can't tell the context in that text, so it's going to be taken literally. To me, it looks like they brought him in for questioning. I don't see. Have you seen? I haven't seen anything about charges or anything being filed. There was a warrant out for his arrest for him to come in for questioning over the threat.
Yeah. Let's see. Later, an investigator had a search warrant for his Facebook come through personal account. He thought it was a simple misunderstanding. Bail for $25,000. So yeah, he was arrested and got that. He ended up getting on like an initial $750 payment of bail or deposit. Let me see here. Yeah. So the eventual resolution was that they let it go if he talked with youth about the responsibility of actions online, I believe.
All right. So he learned maybe don't threaten people online, and he had to do a little speech to kids about the same responsibility.
Okay. Well, also in the same article, here's another one. A gentleman, a guy named Chris Wamoff, 38-year-old guy in Michigan. He had a warrant out for his arrest for this post in reference to the Flint water crisis. So when y'all are ready to march in and take his ass across the street, now across the street is to the sheriff's office. I have my torch. I got warm socks. I'm waiting on y'all. That guy got arrested for making that statement. He was talking about taking the corrupt governor. He was talking about taking Governor Rick Schneider to the sheriff's office because he had done illegal things. He got arrested for that. And I find that incredibly disturbing.
He was talking about taking him to the sheriff, essentially to turn him in?
Yeah, because he'd done something illegal. He got arrested for that.
Okay, yeah. To me, that's a different thing. He's talking about turning this guy in for being a corrupt asshole.
He's talking. This is. I mean, by letter of the law, this is kidnapping. He's talking about a group of people going and kidnapping this guy. I mean, this guy definitely should be arrested. It's kidnapping right there. That's what they're talking about. But context is a weird thing, you know. So I know that these are two very different things, but it's easy to read into the things what you want. And you know what? The case with the guy saying, "Let's burn this motherfucker's house down." It's blatant. It's right there. You don't, honestly, I'll agree with you. You don't particularly need that much context to it to get that what the guy said was dumb as shit. But with this guy, who had a warrant for his arrest,
what happened to the guy that was he arrested on alleged kidnap charges?
Well, no, a warrant was issued for his arrest. The ACLU is challenging it. He got a charge for threatening behavior.
Okay. I mean, listen, I'm going to stand my ground and say you should be held accountable to what you say online. You shouldn't just be able to make threats online. To me, that's a little too far. But that's fine.
And I'm not trying to change your mind by any stretch of the imagination. For me,
you know me well enough to know you're not going to change my mind if I choose my ground. But we're like speaking directly on this guy. He made a threat. They put a warrant out, and then asked him to make a speech in front of kids about it. There's going to be hundreds of cases of this. There's going to be police officers that take it, or police. What's the word I'm looking for?
Officials?
Not even officials, but fuck it. There's going to be
and stuff.
Well, there's going to be police departments. Department was the word I was looking for that I couldn't find. There's going to be police departments that take it too far, but we're kind of in this area where, I mean, if you made these threats in person, they would be taken seriously, or you could hear the context of it. But most of the time, they're going to be taken seriously, and you've already told me that the police officer has their own discretion. But I'm going to be willing to judge that if you threaten a police officer to his face, he's more than likely going to arrest you for it. I think
that I guess what I'm ultimately getting at is that with the Peralta guy, it seems easy because it is easy, because it's right there and you can go, wow, that was super irresponsible. I get why they did that. But as it goes from less black and white to more gray, that's where the problem comes in, where it can be interpreted. So you've got people that think what Chris Wamo said, totally worth a threatening behavior charge. But then you have people like us that go, wow, definitely not worth it, because it is such a complex issue. I mean, it's
definitely complex,
dense.
And it's a case-by-case issue that police departments are going to try to make a blanket rule for. It's just, there is no easy way to do it. But I mean, to me, it's a case. Like we're doing right now. We're going to read into an individual case and make an assessment of it. Police departments aren't going to do that. They're going to try to make a blanket law that's going to go for all of it. But to me, this was completely justified. What was that?
Yeah, I don't think it was, but I think we've run around that bush and circled that drain for about 10 minutes now.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't agree on this. So, but we can go to the next one that we do agree on, which is YouTuber. I wish I had wrote down his actual YouTube name. But regardless,
I'll see if I can find it. He's Scottish, right?
Irish.
He was
Irish.
Scottish in Ireland. Oh, okay.
He's Scottish in Ireland.
Well, you could be Scottish in Ireland.
Well, I get
I was
that,
an
but
I was an
I'm pretty
American
sure
in
he's-
Ireland.
I'm pretty sure he's Irish.
Yeah.
Scotland was Stephen Fry, correct?
No, that was also Ireland.
What the fuck's going on in Ireland?
Catholics.
Marcus Meechan made a video complaining about his girlfriend was in love with this pug. I don't remember the dog's name, but he was going to make it the most uncute thing he could think of, which was a Nazi.
Count Dankula.
Count Dankula. There you go. So it was a joke video. He talks about he's going to make it the most uncute thing. He's like talking about gassing the Jews. He says Sig Heil and gets the dog to raise his paw. He shows him watching Nazi propaganda. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was offensive. It was offensive.
It was designed to be.
I
To a
wasn't
degree.
offended, but it was designed to be a joke. But he made an apology about it. He was arrested on April 28th. Police in Ireland, essentially, I say Ireland, I don't know where in Ireland he's from, but they said it should be a warning that making videos that cause offense will not be tolerated. Essentially saying if you make a video that offends someone, you're going to be arrested. Which is, to me, is ridiculous. And
he might face up to 1 year in jail, which is a little ridiculous.
especially for
I highly doubt it.
Especially
though.
for something. Yeah. I mean, they dropped those charges against Stephen Fry, but he's got money. I don't know how much money this guy has.
Well, YouTube pays a ton, right? Did you get
No.
salary money there or something?
Nope. This guy is the reason YouTube's not paying anymore. But damn it, my throat. But yeah, I highlighted that quote because that's a direct quote from the police officer. If you make a video that causes offense, doesn't specify what kind of offense, just you cause offense, it will not be tolerated. So
That's ridiculous. And let's assume that they made a cogent argument. Like, what was the argument that the wasn't there a Jewish group in Ireland that released a statement in reference to it?
yeah, there was a few. Basically saying like you can't joke about the Holocaust and to make light of these people's deaths is high offense, and I mean it's partial. I mean, it's hard to argue with them, but it's also kind of like, well, I mean, the guy made it as a joke. He starts the video saying he's going to make it the most uncute thing possible.
Nazis are not cute at all. They're pretty gross.
It was clearly not designed to be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's
Well,
it's
my
complicated, but to me, it's context. The guy made a joke video, and you're prosecuting him for it. If he made a video detailing how to kill Jewish people and talked about his plan or desire, then maybe you look into it. Maybe we pull up some charges. Maybe talk about a psych eval, something. But you make a video with a dog watching Hitler on a laptop and you're going to arrest somebody for being offensive. I don't know. I'm trying not to sound super hypocritical after the last argument. It's like,
well, you know what I think we should do? I think we should burn that motherfucker's house down.
well, we're gonna be doing the next
going to jail.
podcast from prison. I'll be on one side of the glass going, "I told you, motherfucker, you couldn't keep your mouth shut."
Yeah, so I really feel like there's two sides of this. I have not talked with anyone, and by that I mean literally I haven't talked with anyone because I spend most of my time alone. But I haven't seen
That's
any
not
comments.
true. You have dogs.
Yeah. My dog is actually outside right now rolling in the grass. But I really feel like this is split into two worlds. The first world is the world of the law, and where you go, wow, this is really dumb that someone was arrested over this. That's absurd. That should be crazy. I haven't seen anyone online, spoken with anyone at all about that facet of it that thought he should have gone to jail. The dividing line, I think, with people is whether his joke was offensive or not. And we have totally shifted the conversation from the fact that a guy got arrested or faces potentially a year in jail, and we switched it to, well, was what he said offensive? And you and I talked about this, like, I think it was like the day after we found out. And Mel Brooks said something that really that stuck with me. I saw an interview with him, and I mean, he did The Producers, which had Springtime, which was a movie about a play production called Springtime for Hitler, that has like a dancing Nazi that's a pigeon keeper.
Seen it.
Yeah, and he said about some of the controversy, and when he references Nazis in many of his films, he said the only way to denigrate something so evil as Nazism is to mock it. And people like Anthony Jeselnik or occasionally Louis C.K., they'll get some flack and they'll get in trouble for some of the more controversial things that they do. But for me, I think it's still making fun of something, making light of it, because it's so inhuman to perceive that someone can think it's a good idea, that it is so absurd. The only way you can process it is to mock it. And mocking it takes the bite out of it, and it makes it easier to process.
That's what comedy is. Tragedy plus time. That's the whole point of comedy. Jeselnik, on one hand, he just like goes to the line and then jumps a mile over it, and then he spends an hour exhausting you and beating you over the head with, isn't it how crazy we are? We're so far past the normal. You're just like, okay, we get it, dude. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Same with Daniel Tosh. They do the same goddamn thing. Yeah. Louis C.K.
I think Jeselnik's funnier though. But like, he had his child molester joke that he opened SNL with, which is, I mean, it's a good joke. I think it's pretty funny. But
yeah, I'll stick with Bill Burr. Louis C.K.'s recent, his most recent special was not my cup of tea.
And I didn't like it either.
But I don't know. Let's get off this topic. I think we're done. Let's go to North Korea, who was just recently added to our update list because, as I was skimming through my phone,
recently fired off another missile.
Yeah, at 4 a.m. I got to find out about that and begrudgingly.
Thanks, we're on a timetable, North Korea, right? We have this thing written out early.
So just like I believe they shot off, it's less than a week. This is the second test in less than a week, or exactly a week, something like that.
It's a hell of a housewarming gift, isn't it?
So they shot off a medium, called it a medium range ballistic missile just north of Pyongyang. They claimed on Saturday that they can hit the U.S. mainland. There's no real fact to that. It's just a claim that they've made, but it's kind of I don't want to say frightening, but it's kind of alarming to hear them make that claim and then shoot a missile off, because these missile experts, they keep all the articles quote these missile experts, but I don't know who the fuck they are. But they
better rename intercontinental ballistic missiles so that they are called intercontinental when they move intercontinentally, not
so
a specific set of miles.
This missile flew about 310 miles, which is substantially shorter. I don't remember what the last week's was, but it was longer than this.
Wasn't it like 2,000 or something?
Oh, I believe the last one they shot at a higher trajectory, so they said it could fly longer. This one, I guess, was more of a straight shot. I don't know.
Just
they said it was an upgraded version of the last one, which don't take this as fact. Just leads me to believe that maybe it was purposely ended, or cut short, or aimed at a shorter distance. I don't really know, but I don't know. But anyway, so you have South Korea, their president, who ran on a policy of trying to strengthen is probably not the best word to use, but mend ties, to try to start a conversation with North Korea. Basically said, that's dashed. Didn't take long, about 8 days. They were like, yep, nope.
He comes over with a lovely casserole to welcome you to the neighborhood, and they just smacked it on the ground.
The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, it's ABE, I'm sure there's a better pronunciation that's more Japanese, but I'm gonna go with that.
Abe, I would just assume.
Abe. I don't know. That doesn't. I guess. So the Prime Minister Abe.
Let's go with Abe.
He called the act a snub and a challenge to peaceful resolution. That's about all I have so far, because I haven't really read on it since this morning. But yeah, it's just further conflict. All this while Trump is curtsying to the Saudi Arabian king and royalty, whatever they are. So it'll be fun to see what comes of this. I'm sure he'll have something to say in a tweet at Saudi time, whatever that time zone is. I sound really just ignorant right now.
I don't know, whatever time it is in Saudi Arabia.
But we're moving out of updates because
Finally.
God, yeah, fucking 30 minutes in, we're hitting that 2-hour mark. I'm so sorry. So
We're gonna have to do a two-parter. We'll Peter Jackson this and just split this podcast up into 2 bits.
like that makes it better. They go to download, like, oh, there's 2 parts. They're both an hour and a half long. Great. So I can not listen to either of them. So we have I don't even know.
Do you want to start with Thailand just because it's easy?
No, we're not starting with Thailand because we're gonna get through the harder topics first. But anyway, we're going into North Carolina was doing their budget deliberations. When was this? Thursday? It was Thursday night into Friday morning, early Friday morning.
Yeah.
So, set up backstory. Essentially, the Democrats are proposing amendments to the budget to try to get some of their programs funded. Republicans, who I'm assuming have the majority in this legislature, were shooting all the amendments down. About 1 a.m., they call for a recess. They come back at 3 a.m., and they propose a budget amendment to combat the opioid epidemic in the state, which is a massive epidemic in pretty much every state in the United States right now. I believe. Don't quote me. They put up $1 million in funding towards that. The kicker is
Where'd they get the money from, Jeff?
yeah. Okay, let's get into this because this is the meat and potatoes of the argument of the discussion, not the argument. They take the money from the education budgets of only the districts and counties represented by Democrats. To be more specific, the 2 northern counties, Northampton and Washington County in North Carolina, they took $300,000 from their budget, specifically the budget that went towards the STEM program and high schools, which is a summer science, math, and technology program called the Eastern North Carolina STEM program. It also specifically bans any state funding for being used for this. And then you had a couple other things, but it took away a program in which the state offers stipends to teaching assistants that are working on their teaching diploma or working on getting their teaching license. It basically helps support them through this time while they're working, I'm assuming part-time, as teaching assistants in the county schools. It only took it from the 7 counties that are represented by Democrats. The program will still be funded in the counties represented by Republicans. You had a couple other ones. I'm going to let you say.
So apparently they also cut $200,000 for a plan to bring in fresh produce, which I didn't know there was a big thing in North Carolina. Cut $250,000 that would fund additional staff at the North Carolina Museum of Art. Cut $550,000 from a downtown revitalization program. And the governor of North Carolina, who's a Democrat, has a program coordinator, and that's a position that they cut funding for as well. They didn't have the salary in there. But also what's interesting about this program coordinator's job is that the job that this person had was to get money from FEMA from when wasn't hurricane. I can't remember what hurricane went through North Carolina most recently. But it's getting the money that they needed from FEMA to, rebuild all the stuff that got destroyed from the hurricane that went through. And so they've cut that person as well, which, I mean, if you add up 200,000 plus 250,000 plus 550,000 plus the program coordinator position, I mean, that comes up to, $1 million in and of itself that probably could have been used for the opioid epidemic. But who knows if those things were already on the chopping block or not.
Yeah. So the biggest takeaway from this, at least for me, was the fact that they specifically attacked these 9 counties, I guess. Yeah, 9 counties are all represented by Democrats, and they're all the majority of them are low income. The majority of citizens in these counties are low income families and African Americans.
Yeah.
So I don't know that was necessarily the catalyst. I think it was mostly just to get back at Democrats. I assume for keeping them late. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was obviously petty. Also, 2 Democrats voted yes on this. They didn't read the bill. They just voted yes. So
I'm tired. I want to go home.
couldn't find their names, but there will be an update. I will figure out who they are. But yeah, I mean, I've been down to North Carolina for it wasn't even meetings. It was just like a little summit for a libertarian, like college libertarians. I mean, their education program is ridiculous. Their representatives are ridiculous. I mean, they were talking in 2013. I don't know, like I know where you're from, Kramer. I'm speaking to the audience. I don't know where you're from, but they were talking about tech schools, tech centers, vocational programs. They were talking about adding them to schools in 2013. Something that's been around, I mean, for decades in most other states. They were talking about just adding them, trying to raise college acceptance rates. And then now they're taking away funding just to be spiteful. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I can tell you, there's 3 Democrats in the North Carolina Congress. 3. Alma Adams. I read an interview with her today about it. I don't believe that she voted for it. So it means that
She's
I think
the representative that represents Northampton and Washington counties, correct? I think I read the same thing.
Let me see here. Alma Adams, North Carolina General Assembly. North Carolina's 12th congressional district, which is Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Lexington, Salisbury, Concord, and High Point. So the only other 2 Democrats that they have in the North Carolina Congress are David Price, who has been in since '97, and J.K. Butterfield, who has a big walrusy mustache also.
I didn't know that there was only 3. The woman that you mentioned, I think Northampton and Washington counties fall into one of those territories you listed. Because I think I read the same article where she talks about, she gets really specific with the funding cuts and all this stuff.
Yeah, she went into a decent amount of detail.
Yeah, because they mentioned it. The original article I read, this is not relevant. The original article I read just called it Northern Rural Counties. They didn't name them. But, yeah, this is just a story of just petty politics that are... I don't know. Part of me wants to believe that they proposed it just as a FU to them and they really didn't think it was going to pass. But I suppose if they only had 3 Democrats in the entire state Congress, then anything that they did, which makes sense why every amendment was just getting shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, North Carolina is a shithole, and I hate that state for multiple reasons. I just want everybody to know that. I want that. I want a T-shirt that says that.
Now I want to see. Now I know I want to look this up in a little more detail. Hold on a second.
Well,
it's the Senate. So hold on a second. North Carolina State Senate.
Need to record this time so I can cut it out. This is like the second long pause.
Yeah. Yeah. So they got a bunch more Democrats in the Senate itself. I say a bunch more. There's 1, 2, 3. There's 15 of the 50 representatives are Democrats. So there's a few more of them in the Senate. So yeah, it seems like it's a little bit different there. So this was actually the Senate and not the Congress. So
yeah,
somebody else.
I don't think they have. We need to cut this whole part. There's no Congress.
Yeah.
There's no state Congress. It's called the General Assembly. But
yeah.
So we're just
They
gonna
have
cut this.
congressional districts. So whatever.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I said the same thing. I just realized that we sound stupid. So, anyways, speaking of state senates, we have a proposal. Well, a proposal that passed this week. The bill was SB 790, proposed by a Democratic Senator Mike McGuire in California. Essentially, the bill severely restricts pharmaceutical companies providing flights, travel, speaking fees, entertainment, consulting payments, meals, or any other. It says or other financial benefits. It does, however, allow for salaries to be paid to doctors for clinical trials, and up to $250 per year per doctor to be given for food. So I just wanted to add that in because I read that at the end. But essentially, it said the bill comes from after a study found that doctors were 3 times more likely to prescribe name brand medications over generic medicines, which to me is like something you probably already should have known, but I guess they had to do an actual study before they could write a bill. The big thing I saw was they were saying pharmaceutical companies were spending upwards of $1.4 billion a year on gifts to California doctors, just doctors in the state of California. But this has been passed to the assembly in California. It passed 23-13. I mean, I'm all for this. I know you had some dissenting opinions.
No, I mean, I don't dissent with the law at all. I mean, I think just from a practical standpoint, I think it's perfectly fine. You know, I think we try to treat healthcare as though it was like any other type of economics, and I just don't fundamentally think that it is. I think it can't be treated that way because economics are callous, and healthcare can't be. It's about making sure people are healthy, and that's expensive and not a profit-making endeavor. I think it is perfectly legitimate to say, look, there may be instances where there is a conflict of interest between what is in the patient's best interest versus what is in the best interest of a doctor's wallet or pocketbook. I don't want to gender bias there.
There are
or the
just as many
interest
females in the medical field. You sexist.
Yeah. But I think it's a perfectly legitimate thing to say. Look, there's conflicts of interest that can crop up. It's totally worth it. I think the law should just stand alone on that, on its own merit. I think people are, in my opinion, a little overly optimistic about things that it could do for the cost of drugs. I know that I'm looking it up now to get a little more info on it, but I know that you and I talked before the show about it. You said Vermont has seen a bit of a drop in some of their pharmaceutical prices because
it's not
people
necessarily
aren't...
pharmaceutical prices as it is doctors are less likely to go for the name brand as opposed to the generic.
Yeah.
Which drops the cost. The generic brand's cheaper, so it drops the bottom line to the patient. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily drop the price. But I mean, if these pharmaceutical companies are forced to compete in some way, and I know you mentioned stuff about them changing the formula every 7 years, so there can't be a generic. But some new medications they can do that. I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, they're always gonna find some way to make their money off of this.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think some
don't...
more common medications, it's more than likely gonna help. It's gonna help financially some of the citizens.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't disparage law by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sure that much like Vermont, it will have a small effect that can lead to a minor reduction in healthcare costs because there's a prescription of a generic as opposed to a name brand. But I was just kind of tangentially off of that. The bigger thing, the issue with that is that honestly, it's patented pharmaceuticals that are mostly funded through the government. I don't know how you can get government money and then patent it and sell it privately. I think there's a few issues with this, and this will be a little stream of consciousness-y, but one is that pharmaceutical companies grossly exaggerate the amount of cost that they spend, and it's in their interest because when they get that patent, part of the agreement with the patent is that they have to have sufficient market control for a time that allows them to make up their costs. If you listen to pharmaceutical companies, they spend about $1 billion maybe a little over $1 billion, making each drug that they do. Multiple studies have shown that the average pharmaceutical company in the United States spends about $350 million per drug. So they have an interest in inflating their costs because that gets them access and control and monopoly on the market for a while. The other thing is that they will, pharmaceutical companies will pay manufacturers of generic drugs to just not make a generic. They'll be like, look, hold off for 2 more years. Don't make the generic. And they'll just give them a bunch of money. And it's worth it in the end for them because they maintain market control. And it's all perfectly legal to do it. There are one of the tactics that they use is they'll just make a minor update to the medication. And sometimes it's just putting it if you have a regular pill, you can just put it in a plastic capsule. Great. This is an update to it. And you get patent extension. And there's also just buying the rights to the generic. I think that they're just I don't want to be raining on the parade, Debbie Downer. This is
too late.
Bad. But I just think that there's so many things that need to be done that are going to reduce healthcare costs just in the world of pharmaceuticals. While that might be a nice benefit of this law, it may be a trickle down effect, as it were. But I'm not opposed to the law, in and of itself. I think it's pretty common sense.
All right. Well, I don't really have anything else to add to that.
Yeah.
This is just kind of a
but we had
straightforward
good news
thing.
though. We had a good thing. It wasn't the Republicans defunding schools in North Carolina. It wasn't Irish people getting arrested and North Korea doing stuff. What seems like a good law got passed. I'm happy. We had one bright spot in the midst of this.
It got passed through the Senate to the Assembly. We could be reporting next week that it was shot down with intense malice. They just destroyed it. Anyway, enough with the good news. We're moving on to a hijacking attempt of American Airlines Flight 31, which I don't really think anybody's talking about. From what I've spoken to people about it, nobody's really talking about it. But
Yeah, I haven't seen much on it either.
This was Friday. So, a Turkish national named Anil Uskanel. I don't know. Every week I have to pronounce these names, and I'm not getting any better at it.
Well, okay, so as a side note, what bothers me about how they print names in Turkish is they never include the special characters. When they print Erdogan's name, they don't have that little crescent moon thing above the G. That's really important because the G becomes silent. And with this cat's name, the S's and C's in Turkish sometimes have these little tails at the bottom, which makes them go from S and K to Sh and Ch, and they never print them. So there's a 50-50 chance you're not pronouncing this cat's name right, or that you're pronouncing it perfectly right.
It's a way bigger probability I'm pronouncing it wrong. Regardless.
Silver lining, maybe.
A Turkish national attempted to breach cockpit of an American Airlines flight from LAX to Honolulu. About 2 hours. It wasn't 2 hours into the flight. I don't know how long the flight is from LA to Honolulu, but it was about 2 hours from landing. It said he threw himself at the door of the cockpit and threw himself. I'm assuming they were saying he used the drink cart to try to break it down. He failed. Flight attendants or the flight crew called the airport. They scrambled fighter jets to escort him in. Law enforcement was there to meet him. He was arrested by the FBI. Passengers were questioned. No bombs were found on the plane or in his luggage. I'm just kind of going down. This isn't necessarily the most important part. It's mainly just talking about it. But the big thing for me was about 2:45 a.m. on Friday, the same day as the flight. He was arrested after being caught on surveillance going through a door that leads to the airstrip on LAX. And he was arrested and cited for trespassing, given a court date, and then released, and then passed screening by the TSA to board a flight at the same airport. I don't know what time the flight left, but the next day. And then this happened. To me, I just find it really the TSA to me, this would be a giant red flag. He just tried to get on the airfield the night before and was arrested for it. they're defending themselves, saying he was arrested and released, and he passed all the screening. I don't know.
I know they said that his behavior, and apparently there was evidence that he had been drinking. He wasn't apparently too intoxicated to fly, but he'd been drinking. So I mean, it may have just been something that was written off as that. For me, the most interesting thing.
Well, he went for a medical evaluation and I believe a psych evaluation. He was.
Did they have like dock in the boxes that they do there? Jesus.
I don't know. Well, he was detained by the FBI. I don't think that they did it on the airstrip. He was detained and charged with interference with a flight crew. Yeah, that's what he was charged with, and taken for a medical evaluation and also a psych eval.
Yeah, but again, the most interesting thing in this is his laptop. He was just covering and protecting this laptop with him the whole time. He insisted on having it with him, and then he eventually got duct taped to his seat for the duration of the flight. Which laptop will play, just as a little teaser, we're going to see that again when we talk about some stuff later.
He was ducked. I didn't read him being ducked.
Oh yeah, he got ducked. Yeah. So
I heard that an undercover police officer and two other men pinned him down until they landed. I didn't hear the duct taping to a seat.
Yeah. So from what I read this one on Reuters earlier today, because I just hadn't read much about it. So he goes to like try to. So originally he was trying to get into first class. He was sitting in first class, and the flight attendant's like, "Hey, this isn't your seat," and he tries to like make a stink about it, and she's like, "Get into coach, you idiot." I'm sorry, business. Economy. He's in economy or economy plus, maybe. Whatever.
You're a third class. Leave.
You get in the cargo hold right now, sir. But anyway, so he tries to go back up to first class again, and they're like, "Dude, seriously, stop!" And then he tries to run the cockpit. Apparently, one of the flight attendants had a drink card, and she's like stopped him from getting up into there. And he was just like, "All right, fine, whatever." And he goes back, but like a couple of people had like jumped by then, and they were trying to figure out what to do with him. And some guy was like, "Oh, I got duct tape." So they just duct taped him to the seat, from what I understand, for the remainder of the flight until they did. Which is pretty cool.
Huh. That wasn't in anything I read. So, yeah.
I may have also dreamed that at like 1 o'clock this afternoon too, so who knows? But I read it in Reuters.
All right. Well, yeah, I just found him the biggest point I was trying to get at was the fact that he was arrested for trespassing in something. It wasn't like he was trespassing just in somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. He was trying to get out onto the airfield. I don't know. I just find it really sketchy. You kind of assume that these red flags stop you from getting on flights, and clearly it doesn't. At least not in this case. It's yet to be seen if there was some kind of negligence by the TSA. They got really defensive when questioned, so there could have been. But the TSA is a whole other thing that I don't want to get into.
Actually, I do want to have a quick story about flying into different countries. It was really funny when we flew into Ireland. They could literally not have cared less. Like there was just like some dude at a gate, and just like a bunch of us like getting in off this flight from Dallas, and he's like, "Hey, welcome to Ireland." Yeah, whatever. He's like, "What do you do?" He's like, "Can you just like write your name and like what you do on this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I wrote my name and my job title." He's like, "All right, cool. Have a good time, man." And that was it.
Because they were waiting for you to come in and say something offensive so they could throw your ass in jail.
I just asked if we could throw a shrimp on the Barbie, and they got so upset. But it was so funny, the difference between Ireland and Heathrow in the States. Jesus Christ. Heathrow was... I felt like I had to solve a Rubik's Cube to get out of there. It was horrible. It was the same way coming back into the States, too. TSA was such a nightmare. The first time I ever experienced it, the first time I've ever flown in my life. And I just thought it was hilarious, the juxtaposition between Ireland, which is like, nobody has anything. The only people that have ill-willed Irishmen are other Irishmen. So we're not particularly worried about it. Come on in. Meanwhile, the UK is trying to shine a flashlight down my throat to see if I smuggled in anything like bread or food or water.
Well, thank you for that anecdote. So let's move on to the King of Thailand threatening to sue Facebook for his crop top photos with his fake tattoos. I'm not going to say the King of Thailand's name because, no, fuck that. You can Google it.
Let's just spell it, though.
So he's a 64-year-old man who's strolling around in Munich Mall last July wearing a crop top wearing sandals and tight-ass jeans and
a little
fake
dog.
tattoos, and a little dog. all more power to you, man. But don't get offended when somebody takes a video of you. Essentially, they have this strict law called lese majesty. You can't do anything that, well, they say it threatens national security to say anything negative or disparaging about the king. Yeah, they've arrested 105 people using this law since May 2014, and it carries a max sentence of 15 years in prison. And yeah, and that's according to the worldwide movement for human rights. I don't know how legitimate that is.
Oh my God! So apparently, on November 12th, 2009, WikiLeaks released a video of this guy with the princess, and I'm not going to try to pronounce her name, wearing nothing but a G-string while just hanging out with very like formally dressed servants. Yeah,
like
Princess Sri Osmi. Princess Sri Osmi. I'm going to see if I pronounce that right.
I thought he just had a young son.
There
were 309
and his
posts.
Poodle.
There were 309 posts on Facebook. They're threatening to sue. I think they're threatening to sue Facebook Bangkok if they're not removed. 178 were removed so far, but there's still 131. I tried to find something like up to date because this happened earlier in the week, and it doesn't really seem to have anything happened yet. I know that they said the representatives for the king sent a personal email to Mark Zuckerberg to remove these. I don't know. I just find the whole thing ridiculous.
Apparently
if
they
you
have.
actually look it up, this has happened multiple times. He does this. He walks around in public like this, not in his country, but in other countries. But then you're not allowed to. I don't know. He broke the first rule, and I believe John Oliver touched on it. The first rule of the internet is don't make a big deal about shit about yourself on the internet because it's just going to make it spread farther and longer. So no one will forget this, and it'll be his legacy.
So, Les Majestes, apparently Thailand has what is considered the most strict laws like this in the world.
Oh no shit! They put people in jail for 15 years.
Yeah, but they got this one woman. I'm just going through and looking at some of the cases right now. This woman, I can't even try to pronounce it, but she's the mother of a prominent pro-democracy activist. She was charged under this law for failing to criticize or take action on personal Facebook messages that were sent to her account by her son's friend. So she was charged with this. This is all about defaming the king. I mean, it's like, it's illegal to, that picture that Putin wanted made illegal where he's like got the makeup and stuff on, and Erdogan not liking, being compared to a cockroach and stuff like that. I mean, that's all this stuff is. But this woman, I mean, let me see here. Agreeing with it. So she ended up getting released on bail, but she was still charged and was arrested because her son's friend said something bad, and she got charged with this. Is ridiculous.
Was her son's friend thrown in jail?
It ironically did not mention him at all.
I have to assume he was. But yeah.
That's assuming that he's alive.
Oh God. Okay, we're going there. I think this is all I really have right now. I'm sure this is one of those things I feel like is going to be in updates for a little while to come. I just want it to be remembered. I'm gonna post a picture of him on the website just to have it there. But let's move on to Rio de Janeiro, where violent protests are breaking out to get President Michael, I don't know, is it Michael? I think it's Michael Temer.
I would assume it's Michel.
Basically, he gave him a step down after reports. He was being accused of paying the former Speaker of the House, Eduardo Cunha, God damn it, hush money. He's denying this. From what I read, the protest started out peacefully, but a section of the protesters, they called them anarchists. I don't know if that's actually what they're going under, but a section of the protesters split off and started fighting with police, and pretty much ever since then, it's just been violent protests, throwing rubber bullets being shot, like stun guns and
tear gas, and there's buses on fire.
Yeah, citizens are lighting buses on fire, throwing bottles, and rocks, whatever they can, at police.
I mean, if we thought the Europeans knew how to protest, Latin Americans are way better at it. Between this and Venezuela, good lord.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about Venezuela this week, but that's more than...
I assume everything's fine. I haven't heard anything in 7 days, so it's probably resolved.
They're just like, you know what? We're good.
They've got other stuff to move on to. Brazil's like getting all types of antsy. But one of the other things that they're protesting is in reference to the austerity measures that the president wants to impose. Basically, Brazil is Greece, the Greece of Latin America. They have very, very juicy pensions they'll give to people. You retire at 80% or pre-retirement. You could retire at like 50. They have a lot of people that were on pensions, and they are just flat broke. Like, they can't afford to pay teachers and police officers. They can't afford to go through with some food stipends. And
they should be good here soon because they have 40 million people on strike right now, and another 14 million that don't have jobs. Period. They should be building up a little surplus.
So, in reference to the food subsidies, one Sao Paulo legislator said that maybe people should eat every other day, and they've gone ahead. They've slashed welfare in the poorest cities in the state of Rio, or the poorest segments in the state of Rio. They're raising taxes on electricity, and this is a weird one. They're shutting down restaurants that provide subsidized meals. So they're just sorry, no more food, no more job, no more income, or taxes that we get as a result of that. I mean, this is all happening at the same time that, I mean, everybody's talking about how broke they are, but the president is throwing these lavish, trying to get people to pass his budget with strict austerity measures. And, Sao Paulo legislators are getting 26% raises. Folks in the judicial branch just got a 41% raise, and they won't raise taxes at all on the wealthy. And for those that don't know me, I'm not a huge fan of taxes. But Brazil has ridiculously low taxes for the wealthy, and they barely pay anything. They have some of the worst economic disparity in the entire world. I mean, there's beautiful in a very sad way shots of the favelas, just there's literal lines where you will have opulent homes and beautiful apartments in the Olympic districts of Rio next to tenement shacks that are just corrugated roofing or corrugated metal and held together with tape.
Yeah, there's countless movies that have been, well, I won't say filmed there, but have used those as a setting. But
yeah.
I just wanted to touch on this mainly the same reason we touched on Colombia? No, not Colombia.
Venezuela.
And we
they are moving into Colombia. Yeah.
Yes, that's why that really popped into my head. But yeah, we touched on it and kind of moved it into our updates because it's one of those things like there's not much to say on it right now, but it's one of those things that are building. Though there's way more to say on this than there was on Venezuela the first week we brought it up. Also, almost nobody's talking about this, which could be part because all U.S. news is talking about is Trump and Russia right now.
Yeah, that's been occupying so much, constantly. But yeah, I mean, I saw a little bit about it. But yeah, they've got. I mean, they're also trying to go through and like weaken some labor laws right now and trim these pensions. I mean, it's really interesting. I honestly didn't pay very close attention to a lot that happened in Brazil, in Greece with the austerity measures that they were trying to push through. I don't know. It looks to be interesting. This is the first general strike that they've had in 21 years, and like basically public transport is shut down. There are just millions of people.
I mean, it's a massive strike. There's 40 million people responding to it. It's a ton of. I mean, that's a ton of people to just leave the workforce all at once.
Yeah.
Plus, they're lighting all the buses on fire, so I can't imagine many bus drivers are able to work anyway.
Hey, they're creating jobs. You got to make new buses. There you go.
So we have. Let's go into another topic. Vice News touched on this week. That seems to be about it. Nobody else is really talking about it, but it's the U.S. military operations in Africa, mainly Somalia, I believe is what it was.
So it's actually the United States Special Forces in 33 different countries on the continent of Africa right now. Somalia is getting the crux of the attention. So, I mean,
Well, yeah, it said there's nearly 100 missions being carried out at any given time by Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and other special forces. But yeah, from what I read, they were talking about operations in ungoverned gray areas against the Al-Shabaab.
Yes, I mean there's a bunch of different groups. There's Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, and I mean Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony. Everyone remembers when that was really popular in like 2011 for those whole 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I just kind of wanted to touch on this a little bit because there was a Freedom of Information Act request that was sent out by Vice News. It was obtained from SOC Africa, I think Strategic Operation Command Africa. And basically, they were looking at, over the past decade or so, what's been going on in Africa. And in 2006, 1%, it was only 1% of our special forces operations were carried out there. In 2016, it's over 17%. There's a huge increase.
Oh, yeah. And not even, you started with 2006, but if you go look at 2010, it was at 3%. So we're having,
it's just this steady incremental
in the last 7 years, or 6.5, really.
Yeah. But I mean, I know that myself, last thing I really think about Somalia was Operation Gothic Serpent, which became Black Hawk Down, and how that was just such a travesty that we haven't thought about it. And the leader of whoever's the Strategic Operation Command for Africa put out in a presentation or in a dissemination of information or whatever it was, that basically Africa's getting ready to be way worse than the Middle East. The current situation in Africa with regards to ungoverned areas, terrorist safe hideouts, or hideouts, safe places for them, recruiting networks, and again, a fundamental lack of state infrastructure is getting ready to be a situation that is worse than, to quote the debriefing, Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So I think it's going to be something that pops up a lot. I want to start looking into individual cases or individual nations. I'll probably try to look into Somalia a little bit this week. But I just think it's always weird how much we just forget Africa is there all the time, because it is just so foreign to our everyday thinkings about politics.
Well,
you just forget that there's
they're using special forces. They're using special forces there, so they're not. This isn't something that's going to be in the news. I mean, that's the whole point of special forces. It's supposed to be operations that just happen. You don't hear about for years. So yeah, it's one of those things. But I mean, what they're talking about is essentially the next Middle East. So I don't know how much longer it's just going to be special forces, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, if it's getting out and becoming something that is talked about more, and there are a few articles written, I think they really started in March of this year, about U.S. involvement in Africa. I mean, if it's getting into the mass-consumed public media, then it's probably something cooking for it already.
That'll happen too quickly. Say like Vice News. Vice News is popular, but I wouldn't say
it's not CNN.
Like, yeah. I don't see like mainstream media covering anything about this for quite a while, just because there's bigger stories to chase, unfortunately.
Speaking of bigger stories, sorry, I thought we were going to do a transition there.
Well, it was a little. It had a little innuendo to it. I was like, "What the fuck are you going for here?"
Sorry, I don't want to imply that.
Let's see. We're going. Let's talk about Erdogan's visit to the White House this week. The biggest story is basically he sicked his dogs on protesters that he claimed were Kurdish terrorists, I think is what he said.
Yeah, so there were two groups there. There were a group of pro-Erdogan supporters, or well, I guess rallyists, because he wouldn't be protesting anything, he'd be rallying in favor, so we'll call them rallyists there. And they had signs that were like, stop the funding of PKK, YPG, YPD, and the YPD is the political party of the YPG, and they have connections to the PKK. So they were there showing support for Erdogan. Meanwhile, I think you had a group of ethnic Kurds, and they're probably Turkish immigrants or Turkish nationals as well. They have a very large Kurdish population there, and then they got into it. And then Erdogan sent a rather muscular, mustachioed man in there to start kicking people in the head.
Yeah, which we saw in that video. I'm assuming you saw the video by now.
Yeah, it's so weird. He's like leans in and he's like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I'm supposed to cook. Okay, I'm gonna go beat the shit out of them real quick."
Well, yeah, they said that there were protesters holding a PYD party flag, but the actual, I guess, the Turkish embassy put out a statement saying protesters were with the PKK. It said they were there with the PKK without permission. I'm sure there's some kind of translation going on there. They were aggressively provoking the Turkish American citizens who had assembled to meet the president, which I then assume he thought gave him the right to then send his guards in to start assaulting people. Because 9 were hurt, and 2 were arrested,
choking out American citizens.
Oh yeah, kicking
like
people in the face as they lay curled up on the ground. I mean, you can see the video. The guards sprint into the crowd and just start attacking people, throwing people.
And this is not the first time they've done this too. I mean, they got into a tussle the last time Erdogan came to the States in 2016. They got in a tussle with some folks. Wasn't nearly as publicized, which I'm sure is something that the Trump supporters will throw out there.
The State Department came out and said, "Violence is never an appropriate response to free speech. We support the rights of everyone to free expression and peaceful protest. We're communicating our concern to the Turkish government in the strongest possible terms."
Kicking out their ambassador?
No, that's who was that? John McCain. He called for that and didn't happen.
It's also super easy to do that when you're not president too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just somebody like Trump who is, I don't know, he has this America first policy, and then shit like this happens. It's just he just doesn't do anything. There's just no action from him from any way. Like, he just had his meeting with him, shook hands. I heard that there was some kind of discussion, basically, where Erdogan was. It sounded almost like he was chastising Trump for his support of the Kurds, I guess. Financially.
Yeah. Like in his statements, he was like, Turkey cannot accept, an armed, terrorist group and something like that. Just like straight up called the president out. Which, I mean, I understand it is a difficult area. There was a great write-up in the Atlantic that Hassan tweeted. I mean, I'm a huge Kurdish sympathizer and a huge Kurdish supporter, but there was a nice analysis that basically says, yeah, the PKK does have really, really strong ties to these Kurdish People's Protection Units, these YPGs. So and that is a problem. But the other problem is no one is thinking long term, and we can support the Kurds and the YPGs all we want, but unless we're going to be babysitting them there forever, they need to stand on their own. And realistically, because his argument was they are so progressive and they value women as equals and they insist on gender identity, it will be really, really hard for them to keep a lasting foothold in these more conservative areas. It was an interesting analysis.
Yeah, I just want to point out. I mean, I don't even know where I was going with that, but I just wanted to go into how big of a piece of shit this guy is, and how nobody in our government did anything about it, other than McCain, who just went on Fox News or CNN and said we need to kick his ass out of the country. That was the extent. It really, it was like when it happened, they didn't even speak on it for 24 hours, and then they spoke on it for 15 minutes, and then it just kind of was thrown to the wayside because they have so many other stories to go through this week.
Well, also, I mean, it's Erdogan sent his, I believe he sent his bodyguards into Norway too, because I think you sent me the image of that, of the Norwegians arresting Erdogan's bodyguards, didn't you?
Was it Norway? I don't know.
I think it was Norway. It was one of the Scandinavian countries, but it was kind of it just related to a lot to what you and I had talked about one week or so back about, or probably a couple weeks back, about the article that I was talking about, weaponizing the diaspora, where he's sending these thugs in to try to get Turkish nationals to vote particular ways in Turkey because they still retain their voting rights in Turkey and they can vote in the EU. So interesting. But I think it was Norway. I think he said that to me, and like the Norwegians got really pissed off about it, and they just arrested a bunch of them. I gotta see if I can track it down.
It's for, I assume, the same thing. But let's yeah, we're already like an hour and 15 minutes in. We need to.
Yeah, we still got more to do. Jesus.
Yeah, now we move into the Trump stuff. So this is the downward slope. There's no This Week in Trump because this week was This Week in Trump. There was nothing but Trump. So let's move into the report this week. Well, it's not even a report. Basically, they said Pence creates a pact called the Great America Committee. He claims it's to aid his own future political interests, as well as helping GOP candidates ahead of the 2018 midterm elections. It's also it's also to help fund transportation costs for Air Force Two while he goes around aiding these candidates, helping them gain nomination or election.
Yeah,
I don't know. To me, it seemed kind of weird. It's for him.
I think it looks weird with the timing, but I think it's pretty innocuous. The thing that I took away from it was that current law states that the federal employees can't use data that was obtained from state fundraising organizations. In his circumstance, it was Mike Pence for Indiana. Federal law prohibits Pence and federal employees from using that data for federal stuff. So these got 100,000, names or phone numbers and emails that he doesn't have access to anymore, that this national PAC would give him. And so he would just be able to. I think it's a little more innocuous, and the timing is kind of weird, and it's something that probably could come in handy if something happens and Pence has to take on a larger role, and literally the only larger role he could take on would be president. So I guess I should just say if Pence happens to become president. But I think in the short term, it's strategic. Let's just build the base up. Let's get all these names back. Let's get a bunch of money because Trump is currently spending us into oblivion.
Yeah, they said this isn't the first time a vice president's made a PAC, but it's the first time.
Yeah, was it H.W. Bush did it too?
Well, they said it was the first time a vice president's used it to fund travel costs.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'll have enough money to fully fund it, but Trump's spending plenty of money with his travel costs to Mar-a-Lago or wherever else he fucking goes to golf. But yeah,
apparently he also goes to Saudi Arabia. So
he's on a 9-day trip to more than.
And he's going to
Saudi
the Vatican too.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because Christians don't build walls, and the Pope is definitely going to bring that up.
He's also like, I'm not Catholic, like I'm an atheist, but he's like the chillest Pope. Like, part of me wants to be Catholic just because he seems like such a nice guy.
The Pope said he's an atheist?
No, I am. That would be weird if the Pope said he was an atheist, but I was like, this Pope seems really relaxed. Like, I don't know. I don't know a lot about Catholicism.
Threw me for a loop. I was like, wait a minute, what? This guy.
We're in the darkest timeline.
But yeah, he is going to the Vatican. There's been a couple stories about the fact that the Pope has come out and said Christians don't build walls, and that that has to come back up because this Pope doesn't seem like somebody who doesn't speak his mind.
Oh yeah, he talks about all types of stuff all the time.
Let's just keep moving ahead right into the ties or the growing reports. Jared Kushner was named. He wasn't named directly.
Person of interest.
Well, it came out through sources that he is the person of interest in the White House that the Security Council or the Justice Department or something. I can't remember who it is that.
I think it's Justice Department.
Well, okay, yeah. Sure. Let's just go with the Justice Department. They said there's a person of interest in the White House, and through sources, reporters have come out and said that it's Jared Kushner.
Yeah.
He's turned. Basically, the reports are he accompanied Flynn with 2 meetings with the Russian ambassador, the ones that Flynn didn't disclose and had to step down over and being investigated for, and he also helped arrange subsequent meetings.
Oh yeah, he has a ton. He has like a dozen undisclosed meetings with Sergei Kislyak and maybe Lavrov as well. I don't know. He's got there were a bunch of meetings that he did not reveal when he was getting his clearance.
Right. I read all kinds of stuff about him and Ivanka. I don't know why I'm saying it like that.
Ivanka.
Ivanka.
Crap! Now I'm mispronouncing it. Come on, Jeff.
I said it right the first time, and I was like, I don't know what it is. I can't say names when I'm speaking into a mic, but they essentially guaranteed Flynn his position.
Yeah.
For his loyalty to the family. It sounds so ridiculous to say, but that's the way they said it in the article.
Yeah. Did you hear about the ethics rule with Manafort and Kushner, though?
I have that. I was going to get to that. Yeah. So the Justice Department can grant a waiver for that. Was essentially Mueller, I would assume. I saw a lot of Ferris Bueller puns, so I have to every time I say a name, I'm like, let me say it
Mueller?
as a question. But yeah, they're considering using a regulation that would bar him from investigating anyone he used to represent, which would be Manafort and Kushner. They're saying this would be used to protect Kushner because Manafort is kicked out of the family.
And everybody already knows he's a corrupt piece of shit anyway. So,
but the Justice Department can grant a waiver for this because his firm represented them. He didn't represent them directly, so I don't know. Well, there's also, both of this ambassador. We're gonna get into the story later, but Kislyak and Lavrov. These are the two people that are. These are the people on the Russian side that are part of this investigation. These are the same people that Trump had a meeting with at the White House and revealed classified information to this week as well. But we're going to talk about that in a minute, I guess, but I just find it interesting. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous. There's just so much stuff. It's just so compounding and complex. The more you read into it, you're like, God damn. How much? What are you gonna how? I've never seen somebody that is claiming innocence and at the same time is doing everything to make themselves look guilty.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Can we do kind of a quick sidebar because it's like a perfect time to, and talk about theories, because one of my biggest frustrations when I listen to people talk about the Trump-Russia connections or any connections with the campaign and the presidency is that one of two approaches is taken. The fifth column approach, which is, there's nothing solid there. You guys are blowing this up. Or the Rachel Maddow approach, which is he personally has lunch with Vladimir Putin at least once a week where he reveals government secrets. There's no middle ground. And it's so frustrating to hear that it's either everything's this is all just dumb, it's crazy, or this is some grand conspiracy. I know that there's 3 operating theories right now. One is the quote unquote innocent explanation. These this just looks really bad and some folks might have known something. There's he's flat out guilty and he is actually a Russian, as we will come to find out somehow, or he's completely innocent. My personal theory, I want to hear yours too, but my personal theory is sort of a combination of the guilty and the quote-unquote innocent one. I think Donald Trump didn't know jack shit about involvement with Russia. Manafort, Stone, Page, Kushner, Flynn, they all knew. Maybe Ivanka. They were all involved in it. And Trump is interested in protecting the brand. He has elements that he can jettison, tools that are no longer useful. Flynn, no longer useful. Stone, no longer useful. Manafort, no longer useful. But he has to protect the brand as well. So Flynn is, I would say, he's kind of on that border. Actually, I would say Flynn was kind of useful. So he tries to protect him, can't protect him in a direct way. So fires him or has him resign. And now he's interested in doing damage control and, again, protecting himself and protecting the brand. He jettisoned the things that he could. He keeps the things that he can. And I feel like, ironically, even though, in my view, he did nothing, or in my theory, he did nothing illegal initially, he's now engaging in obstruction of justice to protect people. That's my theory.
I think that's the general theory that most people believe. You don't really hear a whole lot of people. I mean, at least I don't. I don't see a whole lot of people saying like, yeah, he's working with the Russians. It's mostly that the Russians created ties with people in his campaign or vice versa that were used to influence him.
Maybe it's just the arguments that I hear from. Partly, this might be coming from the right. Some of the folks I talk with, or some of the media that I consume, that I hear them say consistently like, oh well, he's not behaving too well to Russia right now. Do you still think he's involved with them? And you're like, it's an on-running thing. Like it's not so simple and static and monolithic that it's so frustrating hearing that.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess if you want to go with a mix between the guilty, I think there's definitely some illegal ties with his campaign in Russia. I don't think you can really deny that at this point.
Yeah.
There's just too much there. Is it impeachable? I don't really know. But then there's him like trying to.
We tried to make oral sex impeachable. If this isn't, then I have lost hope in America.
I mean, the fact that he came out and fired Comey and then tried to say it was because he didn't believe he could fulfill the duties of that office, essentially, and then went and spoke to Lester Holt and told him, no, I did it. I was going to do it either way. I was going to do it regardless. I sat down and I just thought, this Trump-Russia stuff is just ridiculous, and I'm sick of it. So I'm going to fire him. You're just like, what? Wait. What the fuck did you just say?
Wait, you're tired of the investigation that he's doing into you? Oh, so also about Rod Rosenstein, I read somewhere earlier this week that Rosenstein was aware that Comey was going to be fired, apparently. I don't know how many people were. I think it was not that many by any stretch. But apparently, from what I read, Rosenstein was one of the few people that was aware. But then again, he gets asked to put pen to paper his thoughts on Comey, which sort of puts the words that he used in a whole different light, because he purposefully, in my view, I guess if he did know, would now have purposefully not called for Comey's firing. And then he came out last week, or later last week, I think it was Thursday or Friday, and was like, oh, no, this shouldn't have been used as it came out, I guess, and sort of reiterated that his memo shouldn't have been used as the basis for firing. It's all just so weird. And then he appoints people.
Speaking of people that suggested that Comey should be fired, I mean the thing about Jared Kushner, the topic we're actually on, they're saying that Kushner was one of the top people pushing Trump to fire Comey. So and this is all because Comey was getting close to what had came out anyway, where they've essentially discovered that Kushner was part of these meetings with Flynn and the Russian ambassador. I don't know. The stories I was reading are where before they painted Kushner as this almost boring, quiet, reserved,
the adult in the room.
Yeah, now they're kind of changing the narrative to where he's this vindictive, just, I don't know.
Angry Argyle sweater wearing bad guy from a 1980s coming of
it's kind of hard to buy
drama.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to buy this drastic change in his personality, but I mean, it seems pretty solid that he was at least aware and played a part in these ties with Russia. And the fact that he's still a part of the White House is not going to help Trump's innocence. I think the biggest thing is just, I mean, to me it just seems clear that he's going to get dinged for obstruction of justice, and that's going to lead to impeachment hearings. I just don't see any other way around it.
Yeah. Jared Kushner just looks like a guy that laughs at his own jokes while he's telling them. His face just has that about him. I don't like it.
Well, we kind of already hit on Trump revealing classified information. So we can just.
But the big question is, where did it come from? So originally they wouldn't disclose the source.
From what they were saying, it was from a source that is undercover within ISIS. They're with the inner workings of ISIS, and this information was still classified. It was code word information that it was not supposed to be let out because it puts this ally at risk.
Yeah, because only specific people should be aware of it within ISIS or something like that. But I think it's what I was kind of getting at a little more broadly is that initially they wouldn't say, the source of the information or the state from which the information came. And then it came out and it was said that it was Israel. And that's been what I had heard. But again, Hassan came out and said it was actually Jordan, and that they had apparently some new information that showed it to be Jordanian. I haven't seen that said anywhere else. And when I talked with folks about it, they had still said they had heard Israel, but I don't really watch the news on the weekend, or read the news, I should say. But if it was Jordan, that makes a lot of sense.
It had to do with, from what I saw, it had to do with basic like
the laptop
threats.
thing.
Yeah, threats with laptops, which they've already started
throwing it back to the Turkish guy.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's interesting because if it is the Jordanians, then I guess that kind of plays into one of the operating theories about Syria. Syria, is one of the operating theories of Syria is that it's just going to be split up into quadrants, basically. They're going to have these deconfliction or deconflagration zones, whatever they are just parsing Syria up, like Germany got parsed up after World War II. And the Russians will get an eastern portion of it. I think the Iraqis or the Iranians, the Iranians maybe will get a northwestern portion of it. The U.S. would have control the southern portion, which would be occupied and peopled by the Jordanian military in an effort to keep Iran or Russia from having a direct route to Israel. So it's interesting. We'll see.
Yeah. So something less nuanced. Trump also bragged about firing Comey in this meeting.
That nut job.
All the stuff. Yeah, they called him a real nut job, and it also said stuff about it took a lot of pressure off of him. And he added, telling the ambassador and the foreign minister that I'm not under investigation. Like he needed to tell them that he wasn't. I think he's just going around telling everybody that, just so that everybody is aware that he's not under investigation.
Just so everyone knows, I did not poop my pants in the other room. I just want everybody to know there's no reason to think that it did happen, because it didn't. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
he's
the best part about this was, I believe it was Washington. Was it the Washington Post that broke the story on this about him revealing information to the foreign minister? And the ambassador?
Yeah, it was WAPO.
So yeah, they released it. The White House immediately came out, and I think with MSNBC.
30 minutes, yeah, it was in 30 minutes.
They came out and reported this was not true, this does not happen, and then that same night, Donald Trump tweeted and said, "I did nothing wrong by revealing this information." It was like, oh, technically you're right, but Jesus, why?
Yeah, you do have legal recourse to.
Yeah, but they also said this information was stuff that they wouldn't reveal to allies, much less Russians who are not considered allies. They're acquaintances. We know that.
Acquaintances. Yeah, I think one of the big concerns is that if it was in fact Israeli intelligence that did this, would mean that there is some sort of back channel or some compromising of trust between the Israelis and the United States, because Russia is really good friends with Iran, and Iran, I don't know if any folks know this, doesn't particularly like Israel.
No.
They've fought like a few times. They like to launch rockets and shit, and missiles in return. So I mean that does bring up a lot of questions about the security of Israel as well. I don't know. We'll see. He's stopping over. I think he's doing 2 of his days of his 9-day tour in Israel.
Yeah.
And he's in Tel Aviv and he's in Jerusalem. And he also. Go ahead.
I read that he wanted the 9-day trip to be cut down to 5, and they basically told him no.
Interfering with my golf.
Let's rewind a little bit and go back to the congressman stepping down. Yeah. So Jason Chaffetz.
Chaffetz. I think it's Chaffetz.
Shithead, whatever his name is. The guy who was elected last year.
Utah guy, whatever.
Yes. The Republican congressman who is stepping down.
Chair of the House Oversight Committee.
Yep. He's stepping down. I saw as early as July to take a role in they called it the on-air talent at Fox News. So maybe he's replacing O'Reilly.
Tucker Carlson took over. Well, they've kind of divvied it up. I know Tucker Carlson's doing okay. I don't know. I don't watch Fox News, and I don't think much of Tucker Carlson, so I don't know. I could just be talking out of my ass here. Yeah, so what's really interesting about this is that Jason Chaffetz has been... like, everyone's been so focused on how guilty Trump looks that, like, all the weird crap Jason Chaffetz is doing, just don't even think about it. Like, he... after Sally Yates got fired and she was supposed to testify, he like canceled the House Oversight committee. They were supposed to hear her speak, and he was like, no, we're not doing that. Then he kind of drops off the face of the earth, and then he ends up having they do the Comey testimony with the memos. He was like, oh, we need to see the memos immediately. I've got my subpoena pen ready. And then he backs down from that, and he goes, well, not really. And then he's like, oh, by the way, everyone, I'm leaving now.
Well, he invited Comey to come speak in front of his committee. He's supposed to be there next week.
Which is really weird.
He went on Facebook and said it was a personal decision to return to the private sector.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
he also disappeared and debriefed Trump on things during the first round of hearings too. He just disappeared, debriefed Trump on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it just seems to me like he's trying to get out before shit hits the fan.
Trey Gowdy
can get a nice little check from Fox News.
Seriously, I hope it goes down in flames. So Trey Gowdy is set to take over.
I just heard.
No, a desire, a wish. There's a magic lamp somewhere. Actually, I don't even think there was a subject. I just said hope it goes down in flames. So I don't even think that constitutes a sentence.
Listen, just stop defending yourself. You're under arrest.
Trey Gowdy is supposed to take over that.
Was supposed to do what?
Trey Gowdy, so he's a senator from South Carolina. He was on the short list for FBI director, turned it down. He kind of looks like the bad guy in a Coen Brothers movie, in my opinion. He's like slick back silver hair, and he's got this kind of thick South Carolina accent. But he is allegedly going to be the person that takes over as chair of House Oversight Committee, which means he's going to be in charge of the Trump investigation, more or less, at least from the House's side. So I don't envy him because he's going to be under a lot of pressure from Republicans to find Trump not guilty. To drop the investigation, I should say.
Hadn't heard that. Have they said anything else about who they're putting in charge of the FBI long term?
I don't know who they're.
I know that they selected somebody to, I guess, be the interim head of the FBI. I don't know.
Yeah, that's Andrew McCabe.
That was just a question that is not necessary to answer right now. But we can get right into the actual Comey memo, which there's a lot of reports on it because there's the whole obstruction of justice angle that everybody's kind of getting into. But essentially, the memo came out and it said Comey says that he tried to get him to drop the investigation of Flynn. After Flynn stepped down, I think it was 2 days after Flynn stepped down, he had a private meeting or dinner with Comey and asked him to just, Flynn's a good guy, just I hope you can let this go. And he tried to get him to say he would let it go multiple times, and he wouldn't do it. So, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and that was after the request for a loyalty oath.
Yeah. the loyalty. We talked about the loyalty oath last week. I think this happened after the fact. Well, I mean, I also have in here something about the stuff that's come to light from I believe from the memo, but they said there's at least 18 calls and emails during the last 7 months of the presidential campaign to Russian officials and people with ties to the Kremlin. I don't remember if we touched on that last week or not.
I don't think we did.
This is just all the stuff swirling around. Because you actually go to look into the memo, it's just a shitstorm of information. But like I said, it all just kind of goes around this obstruction of justice angle that everybody seems to be taking, and then it gets into impeachment, and none of that stuff's happening right now. Other than, I think it was Al Green who called for his impeachment on the floor this week.
Justin Amash said something about it too.
Well, yeah, I believe I sent you the video of Green getting up there, and he did like the whole
passionate
speech. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks to be really interesting. I mean, between the potential existence of the tapes, if that's a thing, I mean, the request for loyalty oath. I mean, if how Comey's testimony goes this week. I mean, that could be really interesting. I mean, there are folks.
He's essentially crossing that line, is asking
the Rubicon.
He's asking the head of the FBI to work for him, to be his lackey.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and we're not gonna talk about it right now. But I mean, essentially, it's one of those things. He either is like this villain, this like Bond villain, or he's just that incompetent that he doesn't really understand what it is that he's saying.
I think it's a combination of both.
That's good. That's scary too. But yeah, we're not. I mean, coming into it, we thought there would be more to say on this, but there's really
yeah. I mean,
not.
it's this week has just been just a lot of little things.
Which, speaking of another, this isn't really a little thing, but so we already talked about Trump was in Saudi Arabia right now, or I'm assuming he's still there. But he signed a $110 billion arms deal with the Saudis. Rex Tillerson said the investment could total up to $350 billion. I think he said over the next 4 years. I don't know if that's true. But the biggest thing, which you said you didn't listen to it, but he had his speech to the Arab world today.
Written by Stephen Miller.
He called for unity between the Arab countries to push ISIS out. He said from your communities and from this earth, calling for these countries to push them out of the community and kill them. I don't know. I don't think anything is probably going to unite a group of people being lectured about their religion by someone that doesn't follow it, quite like saying, kill them and drive them out. It was also, you didn't hear
from one of the
speech,
most conservative and religious places on the face of the earth.
When you actually watch the speech, it's just this same note the entire time. He has like no fluctuation in his voice, other than when he starts to wax on about how the great defense manufacturing of the United States of America, and how they're gonna give them the greatest deal on their arms, on their weapons and defense contracts. And
India's actually about to get that. They just freed up their market so that they can, like, Lockheed and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman are all looking at India as the next big place to like have all their weapons, apparently.
Yeah.
But
I had that on here too.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
Well, I didn't have it in my notes. I had it on the short list of stuff to put on for this week, and then I kind of cut it off with a couple others.
Yeah.
But
I mean, which was interesting about the arms deal there. It was originally the same arms deal that Barack Obama had set up. But Barack Obama had a restriction on, I think it was F-35 jets, and Trump was like, "Oh, screw that! Y'all can have some jets." But most of this, if I understand correctly, is going to go to the war in Yemen that they've got going on now, which is apparently like one of the worst human rights situations on the face of the earth. The Iranians are backing the Houthi rebels, along with a former president of Yemen, and they are trying to overthrow the Yemeni government, which is supported by the Saudis. And the Saudis have basically set up a countrywide blockade, and they're just starving these people out.
Wow.
And it's just a horrible human rights situation. People have access to nothing but guns, apparently.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he ended the speech essentially. He basically saying Middle Eastern nations need to do more for themselves to combat the Islamic State and not rely so heavily on the U.S. I'm assuming that's what he wants them to do with the weapons, to take the weapons and go do the fighting instead of the U.S. having to do it. Okay.
Hinting at a Middle Eastern NATO kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's saying what he was hinting at. That was just he's just reading from the teleprompter. He's the nations.
What am I hinting at here, Stephen? Okay.
The nations of the Middle East will have to decide what kind of future they want for themselves, for their countries, and for their children. That was around the end of the speech. Like I said, I mean, it was a lot of stuff. He talks about God a lot, ending violence in the name of religion, condemns Syria and Iran. I won't say it was all over the place. It was one, like I said, it was just one note. He was just going on and on and on, as the audience sat there with their headphones in, bored to tears. You said, nobody wants to listen to this bloated white man come in and tell them about how they should run their country and their religion.
I think my two favorite things about the Saudi trip are, one, that gif of Steve Bannon getting startled that you sent me. Oh God, I love it so much. But the second was that Toby Keith came with him. Toby Keith, the man that sang "The Angry American," will stick boot in your ass. Yeah. It's the American way. I hate The Hill because it's playing music when I was bringing that up. I hate it so much.
There's also the fact that I believe it was Fox. Fox was like praising Trump for not bowing or kneeling to the king of Saudi Arabia, like right before he curtsies to the king of Saudi Arabia.
Which is way more effeminate than a bow. A bow is respectful and masculine. A curtsy? Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was one of the articles I read that isn't really important. It's just one of those like hilarious things. Other than that, I mean, there really haven't been too many gaffes. Like you would, there were people expecting way more. I mean, he still has time. There's still like 7 days left at least, so he can do.
Did I accidentally call them Islamers again? Oh crap.
Yeah. So let's end the show on the Washington Post op-ed by what's his name, Ross Douthat.
Yeah, I think it's Dalvat or Dute or something like that. Douthat.
Well, he wrote an idiotic article, basically calling for the use of the 25th Amendment to be used to remove Trump from office. He called Trump a child that says he doesn't understand the nature of the office that he holds, and claims that he's incapable of understanding the obstruction of justice or collusion with the Russians. Yeah, I mean, the whole article keeps calling him like a child and alluding to his childlike ignorance and as to why the 25th Amendment could be used.
I feel like this article was actually supposed to be published on January 21st, but he forgot to publish it until today because it reeks of none of the context, nothing really that we've learned. It's just bitching. It's just stream of consciousness bitching. Oh, he's a child. He's immature. We need to use the 25th Amendment. And like kind of stupidly joked about with you before we started. It's like a BuzzFeed video of like, you've been trying to impeach your president wrong the whole time. Use the 25th Amendment. Like, you're not being fucking novel, dude. Because, I remember the 21st Amendment. Let's do it this way. The hell is wrong with you? Like, yes, everyone knows he's an idiot. Everyone knows he's acting like a child, but you're hitting these points like now. You're acting like you discovered something new by calling him stupid. People have been calling him stupid for 2 years. Well, people have been calling him stupid his whole life, I'm sure. But
he starts talking about like anonymous aides and members like his staff that speak about him as a child and intellectual void and a threat to national security. And he goes, and they say even worse things off the record. It's just like, ooh, these are not reasons to take him out of office. He's doing plenty to do that. So why write this article now and then go around and try to act like you're being clever? The best quote that I have on the article, and I told you, was they said this was the worst idea since Jay Leno at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And I believe the author said that himself in an interview. Not that he said it; he wasn't the originator of the quote. But I mean, yeah, it seems like even like I've heard him talking about the article. Even he knows it's ridiculous. But he ends the article calling for Pence, Ryan, and McConnell to reconsider their support of Trump. Like that would in any way, shape, or form change anything right now.
I think one of my favorite things, or not one of my favorite, one of the most surprising things about this article is I read it and I got done reading it. And my first thought was Democrats learned nothing from this election. This still sounds like ivory tower, living in a coastal city. Trump is a moron speech. And I looked it up, and this dude is conservative. That was the thing that threw me for the biggest loop. Is it sounds like this guy who, I mean, well, first of all, he replaced David Brooks at the New York Times for like the conservative like side of it. I mean, how conservative can you be? It's not National Review, it's the Times. They aren't exactly, right of center. But still, it's just like looking at this supposedly conservative columnist saying things that Huffington Post and the Jacobin and Mother Jones were screaming about for the past year. It's like the right came around to this argument that the high and mighty ivory tower left did when they thought that only morons voted for Trump and he would never win. It was, I think this is the worst thing that I've read since that was like Gert Kunstmann article about firing the AR-15 and how it gave him PTSD.
I've never read that article. I'm glad.
You've never? Oh my god! I have to send it to you.
I don't need that in my life. I'm reading enough. I'm reading enough right now. On break.
It's a quick read. It's so good. It's such a quick read. He talks about the concussive blast and then the rifle butt bruising and harming his shoulder, and how he had a temporary case of post-traumatic stress disorder. And it pissed me off for so many reasons. And I know that this is just like just circle jerk bashing this guy right now. It pissed me off for so many reasons. One, my dad was a professional firearms instructor. I was shooting AR-15s at age 8. And 2, I work in the field of study of post-traumatic stress disorder, and it pissed me off so much for that as well. Oh, you need to read it. It's so good. It's hateless. It's like when you hate listen to something.
Oh yeah, I get that. I think that's all we have for this week.
Yeah. What's our time like? How did we get it under 2 hours?
Oh, it's under 2 hours. With a little bit of editing, we're gonna be right at our record. So real quick, you can listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play. I say that every week. You can also follow us on Facebook and YouTube at the Armchair Constituents, and on Twitter at the AC_podcast. You can also contact us through our website, armchairconstituents.com, or our email, armchairconstituents@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from some of our listeners. Maybe give us some ideas for stuff you want to hear us argue about.
Tell me that I'm right specifically.
Yes. Fuck. Anyway.
Blog posts coming up.
Yes. Yeah, we have the Kramer's got his first blog post. Should be out the beginning of next month. Or sooner, possibly.
Yeah, it should be done by Tuesday. I think I'm gonna do one every 2 weeks, and Jeff will do one. So we'll have 2 blog posts a month. We'll each do one a month. You'll have one every 2 weeks, doing just different things that we are interested in. This first one's on right-wing populism. I think I'm going to, one after that, I want to touch on cultural Marxism, because I hate the way that the people on the right abuse that term and don't actually know what the Frankfurt School believed in. So I look forward to that.
All right. Well, I think that's it. We will talk to you next Sunday. With more shit about Trump.
And UK vaping laws, we're doing that.
God